The ramifications of Donald Trump's zero tolerance policy continues. There are hundreds of children who have not yet been reunited with their parents. Some of those parents have been deported. Some of those parents are difficult to trace back to the children because there wasn't proper documentation of who these children belong to. But it was interesting to hear from Ivanka Trump and her thoughts on the zero tolerance policy. During a recent event with Axios, she was asked what her thoughts were on the policy, and here's what she had to say.
One point in the White House for a number of your colleagues was the kids at the border issue. What is your view of that?
Yes, that was a low point for me as well. I feel very strongly about that, and I am very vehemently against family separation and the separation of parents and children. So I would agree with that sentiment. I think immigration is incredibly complex as a topic. Illegal immigration is incredibly complicated. I am a daughter of an immigrant. My mother grew up in communist Czech Republic, but we are a country of laws. So, she came to this country legally, and we have to be very careful about incentivizing behavior that puts children at risk of being trafficked.
Okay. So she's playing both sides there. Let's just keep it 100, right?
Yeah. No, she's trying to walk the line. Look, I appreciate that she said that separating families was a low point, and I think she's the only one allowed to disagree with Donald Trump, because if anyone else said that, Trump would have been on Twitter already, like, we're not winning anymore with our daughters. Our daughters are a problem. How come no one separated me from her? Okay, but it is his beloved daughter, so she gets to say what she wants, and I'm glad that she's finally at least tweaking him. But when she sounds a million times smarter than Donald Trump, but at the end of the day, her thesis was nobody knew that immigration was this complicated.
No, at the end of the day, the thesis was, let me go ahead and soften the image of my father, but also regurgitate the same talking points that are not valid, that have no data behind them. And so again, we are a country of laws. You should tell your father about that. He should be aware of the laws because he seems to think he's above the law. But more importantly, look, child trafficking is a serious issue, but they're conflating that issue with what happened at the border with the zero tolerance policy. We're talking about parents showing up with their kids, looking for amnesty, and then having those children separated from their parents. They were separated from their parents. We're not talking about smugglers. We're not talking about coyotes. We're not talking about anything other than families here. And so don't conflate two separate issues in order to walk that line and avoid pissing off the Republicans, because that's essentially what she did there. By the way, even though the zero tolerance policy has been stopped, right, thanks to some federal judges and thanks to enough public pressure that Trump ended it, the reality is it set off a domino effect. And right now, what Republicans are trying to do, and they're fighting aggressively, is do away with protections for these children. They're still trying to do away with the Flores settlement. And so I'll get to the details of that in just a second.
So they're looking for asylum, of course, not amnesty, but
sorry about that.
Yeah, I know, you just misspoke. It's not a big, and then to be fair to Ivanka, even Trump himself said that she pushed internally. He said, Ivanka feels very strongly. This is when he reversed his policy. My wife feels very strongly about it. And then then he realizes, oh, that doesn't look good. They seem like good guys and I don't. So he adds, I feel very strongly about it. I think anybody with a heart would feel very strongly about it. But you're the one who separated them in the first place. No, you don't get to claim you have a big heart. But anyway, apparently Ivanka did push behind the scenes to end the policy as well. I'm being fair. Give her credit on that, and she's now saying it publicly. But she says, "Oh, my mom came over legally," and Anna made a great point about how it's funny who they want to apply the law to. If you're powerless and you came to help your family either run away from violence in your home country, or even if you just want to get a job and live the American dream, etc., you're apparently a terrible lawbreaker. But if you might have done corrupt business deals or colluded with foreign countries during an election, no. The rule of law is irrelevant. For the powerful, it should never apply. By the way, if you're a big banker, it should never apply, and the Democrats and Republicans agree to that. Only apply the law to people who have no power. If you have a lot of power, no, rule of law is nonsense. That's just for the middle class and the poor. And so finally, 431 children have not been reunited. It's a bigger number overall, but these specifically because their parents were deported. So her dad didn't realize apparently how complicated immigration was, so ordered that the families be separated, ordered that their parents be deported, and then went, oops, it turns out we still have their kids.
So what's going to happen to these kids? What happens to migrant children in the future? This is something that Republicans are asking, and they want to essentially set the rules for what can happen to these kids. And right now, there are luckily protections indicating that children cannot be detained for longer than 20 days. That is the Flores settlement, which was a settlement reached back in the 1990s. Well, Republicans don't like that. The Trump administration doesn't like that because they don't want families seeking asylum to be free, I guess, as they're awaiting their court dates. And so they want to detain them. They want them to be in custody until they have their cases worked out. And so there is a growing movement, Graphic 21, there's a growing call from Republicans and administration officials to keep immigrant families locked up for the entirety of their bids for asylum or legal status, and that could take months or years. Now again, based on the Flores settlement, kids cannot be detained for that long. And so right now you have senators on Capitol Hill, Republican senators specifically, who are trying to pass legislation that would essentially undo the Flores settlement and allow them to detain children with their parents indefinitely. Okay, and then there's also an interesting tactic that they're considering. So they will essentially tell the parents who are seeking asylum with their children, all right, look, here's the thing. You can't be detained with your kids, okay, for longer than 20 days. So what do you want to do? I mean, we're going to have to, you can waive the Flores settlement, right? Say that you're okay with your kids being detained with you indefinitely, or if you're not okay with your kids being detained indefinitely, then we're gonna have to separate you from your kids. Essentially giving them this impossible ultimatum.
Almost like a Sophie's choice.
Yeah.
And so you wonder why people want to abolish ICE, because they're worried that this is not the right way to enforce our laws, and that this organization has gotten away in their zeal to hunt the most powerless people in the country. And it's because of statements like this. The ICE Executive Associate Director, Matthew Albence, in front of Congress said, give us the authority to hold a family as a family unit. And he explained indefinitely. So yeah, wanting to hold a family indefinitely because they cross the border when it's totally unnecessary is needlessly cruel. Now, why do I say it's unnecessary? They give them ankle bracelets, and the overwhelming majority of them, yes, not only come back, they come back for every single proceeding and every court.
86% of these asylum seekers go to their court dates and they do what they're supposed to do. So let's just be clear about that.
And Albence, when asked about it, told the committee that most times we don't see them again.
Please.
That's not true at all. And then he was asked a follow-up question, and he said, do you know the percentages? And he said, no. And he said, but it's, quote, a small percentage that ever return to court. No, it's not, it's 86%. That's a very, very high percentage. So they are purposely framing it in a way to make it seem like, oh my God, we'll never get these people unless we lock them up together as a family. And the only other choice we'll give them is, either we're gonna rip the kids away from you, or you sign away your rights for your kids not to be in prison for over 20 days. So damned if you do, damned if you don't. And this is the gratuitous cruelty that people object to with ICE. They return to their court hearings. Just follow regular procedure and do not imprison the kids.
But these detention centers, they can make a lot of money by detaining people indefinitely. No one ever talks about the profit motive behind it, except for here at TYT, where we talk about it incessantly. But it's important to point it out, because at the end of the day, it's not about the facts. It's not about whether or not the majority of people show up to their court dates. It's about the profit motive and how much money these institutions make.
I wonder how many ICE officials go on to work for private prisons.
Yeah.
By the way, not only hashtag abolish ICE, hashtag abolish private prisons.
Yes.
To me, that's a much easier question. It's a layup. Anyone who's for private prisons literally does not care about freedom of Americans. They are incentivizing locking up their fellow citizens, right or wrong, for profit. So make sure you spread that around. Hashtag abolish private prisons. 2 easy ways to follow the Young Turks. One is hit the subscribe button down below. Then you're a TYT subscriber. And second is ring the bell. And when you do that on YouTube, you're notified of our videos.